Recently, I was watching the ninth entry in the mainline Star Wars films, and I found myself increasingly checking out with the movie. I started asking myself too many questions, especially during the battle on the planet Exegol. When in the premise of the film, it suddenly becomes clear that the quote unquote resistance has won the battle and the quote unquote Imperial ships are now completely helpless and cannot leave. Why don't the rebels spare them? During the original trilogy, for example, the rebels did not systematically kill all the Imperial they could. After Yavin, of peoples on thousands of ships. It also reminds me of the trade at the start of the Last Jedi, when a few slow, unwieldy bombers and fighters are traded for a massive capital ship full of enemy personnel. In military sense, that's a great trade, but on a human level, can the rebellion truly afford such a trade? So this idea came into my head progressively. Why is this so important in films? So I'd say first of all, it grounds the film. It brings it slowly closer to reality. In this fantasy setting of the Star Wars universe, one of the rarest things we have in common with Jedi and fighters and people who fly through space is they can die, they can cease to be, at least in their universe. If people can die, the story can potentially have higher stakes. If and furthermore, if the death has some meaning, has some impact on the character, or the characters or the protagonists, it can have more impact on the viewers. It gives momentum to the film, and thus we can get invested. Okay, so I want to begin with the original movie, the first film. So early on in the film, after the spin moves on to Tatooine, where we get to meet Luke and see how he lives, his family, and all that. And here again, the Empire is shown to have an iron will. So they're ready to immolate people, they're ready to slaughter Jawas, just to recoup their loss of the plans from before. That the Lars family is just burned to crisp. So the stakes are even high when the Empire isn't concerned. For example, in the cantina, we see between excursus. Most of the main deaths and the main moments, story beats are around the Death Star. So most importantly, we kind of have the crux of this film. We witness the attack on Leia's homeworld by the Death Star, and this destruction of Alderaan is kind of the thing the story rests upon because it justifies all the other events. So seeing the Empire destroy a world is a powerful symbol of what the rebels are fighting for. And this is further reinforced by Leia and Ben's reaction during this attack, and it brings weight to the moment. These stakes, the potential of this weapon means that the rebels can't really surrender ever. And previous image like that of the Star Destroyer against Leia's ship is even further reinforced. They're ready to use deadly force, and they're the most deadly thing in the universe. We're certain that the damage that the rebels were doing to the Empire pales in comparison to the destruction of Alderaan, which can't really be justified in any way except as an act of terrorism, like in its primary sense. This genocide of 2 billion people is all the more reason for the rebels to want to fight even harder. And we'll see this element of selflessness and sacrifice in the rest of the film. To destroy the fear created by the Empire, it's essential. But we also get to see the result of destruction when a protagonist flies through the wreckage of the planet. There's basically nothing left. There's nothing left of 2 billion people. And we kind of see the Imperials caught red-handed. The Death Star is still around Alderaan. It hasn't left yet. So this chance, with many fighters, soldiers, and civilians, just to get a chance to destroy the Imperial weapon. The attack is monumentally hard, and the rebel strategy involves, despite the fact that it was at the hands of one of the best rebellion pilots. So any rational people who hold their lives as a supreme value would probably not partake in this battle. But neither side evacuates, even its leaders. we decide to stay and, in the Imperial case, die vaporized. So, for example, I wonder if each side lets their people choose if they remain or go. For the Imperials, I think they don't have much choice, but for the rebels, they all choose to stay and expose themselves to die in hellfire. But they let Han leave with the funds he needs to pay Jabba, for example. And this allows Han to risking death, near certain death, if he opposes the Empire. And we'll see in the later films how, with his action, Han makes himself a target for the rest of the trilogy. So Han has a chance, and then he chooses to become a hero and save the day, even though he wasn't forced to do so in any way, proving that he has more in common with Luke than the viewer would have thought at first. So when the Death Star finally explodes, the rebels are victorious. They owe all their lives to the pilots who sacrificed themselves, and to Luke, who was killed enough and ready to die as well. But on the other hand, they have taken more than 1 million lives. They've killed many Imperials. Imperials will hate them even more, and will be even further motivated to eliminate them all. So this means, in a way, that these massive kills of the people of Alderaan and the people on the Death Star, even though we don't really know anyone from Alderaan except Leia, we can see she's very sad, and we don't really know any Imperials personally. The only one who's been really developed is Vader, and we kind of hate him at this point. So this means that negotiations will be impossible in the coming films. They won't be really able to do anything to repair the situation. We'll need a military solution to these problems. So death in the original Star Wars film was omnipresent. There are a few scenes where the threat of killing, fighting, or talking about killing are not there. The fear of death created by the Empire is mirrored by the selflessness, which is the central idea of the rebellion, where most of them are ready to die for an ideal, but they're being ready to prepare to sacrifice themselves for victory. The stakes are also raised by this readiness to sacrifice, and we create a complete climax only for the final decisive confrontation, which wasn't the case in, for example, the prequel trilogy, where the stakes are always all over the place. But here in the original Star Wars film, there's no other choice than vanquish or perish on a planetary scale. Essentially, the Empire forces the rebels to be the best they can be, to be ready to fight to the death, and for most of them to give everything up by choice, so that others will have just a chance to make the same choice as well later. Globally, we can see that the rebels killed to save people, to get away and survive, to get the essential plans they need, or to nullify the Empire's fear on people, to show that victory can be accomplished even though there are sacrifices. And the Empire uses weapons and power to suppress people, to obtain more power and create more fear to rule with an iron fist.